Okay, so I just lost 45 minutes of recording, but might as well do it again. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna do a pretty much a tutorial of the whole rig as to where we've gotten it so far in class. So I'm just gonna kind of jump into it. And yeah, again, I just lost a lot of footage, so if I go a little bit quicker than usual, but I'm not going to explain everything I do exactly, but hopefully you will be able to follow along. So I'm just going to bring in my model. There are a couple of extra things in there that I'll get rid of. Just going to save it quickly as a copy so I don't overwrite that. Just overwrite the file I made before. And yeah, let's go. So I'm gonna start straight away by clicking character node script, and so you'll have that if you don't have it on your home computer. Remember, you'll have that in the scripts folder of the file I gave you, of the project I gave you. There'll be a character node script, and just run that, and remember that just sets up straight away our group structure for our rig. So it's going to be rig marine 01, and I'm just going to straight away drop my geometry into the model group of that hierarchy. Okay, so and I've got this. Yeah, that's fine. I've got a display layer ready for geometry. So I'm just going to start with adding our joints. Right, so we start first with the root joint. So I'm going to jump in the front view and just going to snap it onto the grid into a kind of position I want. And then instead of using the joint tool from here, I'm actually just going to duplicate. So Control D, and I'm kind of going to just move down the leg and going to get things pretty much where I want them. And this ankle joint down here, I kind of want on the in the middle of the foot. So I'm actually snapping it to that line there with V. So snapping it to that line in the geometry. And then I need two more, and they're both going to be at the bottom of the foot and kind of in the same position. So I'm going to step into my side view. That's my perspective, but I'll just jump into my side view there and just move them all into the correct positions in the Z axis here. And actually it might be easier in the perspective. Yeah, it is. And I can see that some things aren't actually in the correct position at all, but it's not the end of the world. And my ankle isn't either. It needs to actually be around where the ankle would be. I'm just going to grab that one, move it to the ball of the foot, and this one move it to the toe. So I'm going to snap it right to the end point here. So hopefully those are snapped to the base of the mesh, the very bottom. So V, and I've snapped it down. And yeah, and usually I do snap it to some point on the mesh. Yes, that's kind of perfect. Okay. One thing I did actually want to do though, so instead of laying them out like this, where I don't know exactly that these joints here of the leg, I want them actually to be in exactly the same plane, right? I want them to be straight, because it just makes it much easier for the IK handle to do its calculations, and it's just much better practice to make sure, because a leg, of course, is actually perfectly straight. So if I'm doing it on an angle like this, I don't know that it's perfectly straight. I mean, even if I get it and it's looking pretty straight up and down, I don't actually know that's, and see, it's not actually that perfect, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these joints, and I'm just going to snap them all. So these four joints here, I'm going to snap them all so they're vertical, so they're above the other. I'm also going to just move these knee joints a little bit close together. And then I'm going to parent them so I can rotate to make sure they're in the same line. Okay, so parent ankle to knee. And then I'm also going to it's easier instead of parenting. Middle mouse click in the outliner does the same thing as a parent. So I'm just going to middle mouse until I get, oh, that was not right. Ah, there we go. Why did I do that? Yeah, there we go. Now I know that they're vertical, although they're in the same line. What I want to do is I'm going to rotate this joint until I get it to where I want it, right? So I want them all straight, and I want this last joint to be kind of in the middle there. So that means that all the joints coming down here are perfectly straight, and yeah, that'll work for us. Now, remember with joints, we want 0 rotation, right? So this is where our joint orient comes in. So a lot of what we did in class was today, we looked a little bit at custom or manual joint orientation. So I want this joint to be oriented this way, but I don't want any rotation values to be in the actual rotation, okay? So if I have a look at what this value is 14.294. I'm going to copy that. So I'm in my attribute editor here. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it into the corresponding spot in my joint orient down here. Okay, so you see it's gone even further that way, but now I can zero out that rotation, so I'm making sure that I've actually got, so you always want to, if you look in your channel box, your joints always need to have 0 rotations when you're starting with them. When you're setting up the rig itself should always have 0 rotations of the joints. Okay, so I probably need to rename my stuff now, which would be a good idea. So I'm just gonna grab them in order, open my renaming script, and rename them. So bn root 01, bn left hip 01, bn knee A01, bn left knee B01, and I forgot the left on this one. Bn left ankle 01, bn left, what is it? Oh, it's ball 01, and BE, because it's the end joint, BE left toe end 01. Okay, so just going to double check my naming to see that I've got in the right order. Yeah, I have. So that's toe, that's ball, that's ankle, that's knee, that's hip, and go away. And there we go. And so we've got our root as well. Okay. So now I'm just going to unparent these because we're going to do that manually later, remember? Because that was just to make sure they're in the same line. And they are on the same line, so I can actually move this this in the Z axis. I don't want to move it in the X axis anymore, but I can move it in the Z, and it should be fine because it'll stay on that same plane. Okay. Now, so where are we up to? Yeah, so we actually probably could have oriented them then. Should have been fine. Okay, so let's start our parenting. So toe end, I'm just going to use middle mouse click again. So toe end is going to go underneath ball. Ball is going to go underneath ankle. Ankle's going to go underneath knee B. Knee B is going to go underneath knee A. And knee A is going to go underneath hip. So that's the full joint chain of the leg, right? Nice. Now, let's do the orientations. So I'm going to use the little script or the little snippet that I used in class today, which is select dash HI. And remember that selects all of the objects in the hierarchy of the of whatever you've got selected. So it's the same. It's exactly the same as me going selecting each one of those. But what it does instead, you can see as well, if I just run that code, it selects them all for me. So it's really useful if I want to select all of the joints in a chain, specifically, of course, that's what I'm doing. But it's useful in other, definitely other times as well. Yeah, so give me a sec, just checking something on my other screen. Yeah, nice. Okay. So let's do our orientations now. So the reason why I was selecting all of these, all of those, was I just wanted to turn on my local rotation axes. So you can see that my axes aren't consistent yet, and they're kind of not pointing down the chain like I want them to. So luckily enough, we can just use a excuse me, automatic orient joint. So what I want is I want the x-axis to be pointing down to the next one. So that's my primary axis, x. I want my secondary axis, which is going to be the one pointing out towards. I want that to be z, and I want y to be going to the side. So that's going to be primary axis x, secondary axis z, and the secondary axis world orientation is going to be pointing the z, or pointing the secondary axis along the world axis of x. So let's do that. So z is now kind of is along the x-axis, which is great. We've got x pointing down, y coming out, and that's pretty good. If you want it to match match a little bit closer the axes that we have in the scene. So remember, y is up, z is actually coming towards me. So if I want z to be that, if I wanted z to come out towards me, I'll change the secondary axis to y. And I can also negativize that. So see how the z is going backwards. If I change this here, go from negative to positive, that'll turn it around. Okay. So z is coming towards me, x is going down, y to the side. But I actually want z to be going out to the side. So, and y coming towards me, just for just for the way I like it. Okay, so we've got, it's all consistent. If we rotate our z, we can rotate, if we grab all of our joints and rotate z, they rotate together, which is exactly what we want. Nice and consistent. And I'll just turn off my local rotation axes, and that joint chain is done. Okay, so the next step is the bit of the confusing one, because I know you guys had a little bit of difficulty with it, but it's the joint driver chain for the feet. So remember, this foot is going to need other joints to actually move it around, so we get the functionality we want. Okay, so it needs another joint chain, and remember, this is our joint driver joint chain. So I'm going to grab my joint tool again, jump into the side view, and I'm going to start drawing out some joints. This first one I'm going to snap to the end, so the heel. Then I'm going to grab it, I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to snap it exactly to the position of the ball joint. And I'm going to duplicate again, snap it exactly to the position. Oh, it's not exact, is it? So this toe end here is actually not on the axis like I wanted it to be. So I'm just going to unparent it, then snap it down. There we go. See, that's correct. And I'll actually have to reorient these joints now as well. So I'm just going to delete the new joint I created, reparent the toe to the end ball here, so middle mouse and drag on top. And I'm just going to grab my hip again and just do exactly the same orientation I did before. So that did almost nothing, but it just changed the orientation of my ball joint slightly to make it correct for that level. Okay, so everything should be right now. So I'll just duplicate this again. So I'm gonna drag it along. Yep, perfect. So I've got 1, 2, 3. I'm going to duplicate again, and I'm going to snap this one to the position of the ankle. Yeah, there we go. Nice. So remember, these joints are going to be driving the movement of other joints in our foot, so we get the functionality. Yeah. So let's do the parenting for these joints first. So we're going to start with the joint here, which is the ankle. So I'll actually rename them first. So let's just grab that and grab the toe next, then grab the ball, then grab the ankle. Jump into my rename script. It's going to be JDRV left ankle. I'm just going to copy it down. JDRV toe. Actually, no, it's ball, of course. Ball. And it's toe. And then it is heel. Okay, cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up the... Oh, I did the wrong way. Idiot. Okay, so that one's actually the ankle. And always double check because, yeah, the amount of mistakes that are made like this, it's just... If you don't correct them straight away, then they can just really kind of get on top of you. So always double check that you've named everything the what you wanted to name them. Okay, cool. So let's start with the ankle. So the ankle is going to be parented to the ball. So we go ankle, ball. Then we go ball to toe. We go toe to heel. So we've got our joint driver chain here. And remember what this does. We want it to drive the movement of our main joint chain. And that gives us things like our toe point and our heel and stuff like that. But you'll see as we set it up. So yeah, and especially for you, Grace, this will be the confusing part. Well, much of it will be confusing, but yeah. Okay, so now we've got that set up, which is going to be working pretty well for us. Let's attach our leg to our root, and let's mirror it all across. So I can just grab the hip, and I can also grab the heel of my joint driver chain, and I'm going to go skeleton, mirror joints, and mirroring across the YZ plane. So you always check your axes, YZ. It's going to swap L for R. Oh, okay, I have to do it one by one. Oops. So there we go. There's that one, and there's that one. So yeah, so that's all good. Now let's create the IKs for the legs. So I'm just going to go to my skeleton, grab my create IK handle, double click on the tool, make sure it's the RP solver, and you don't need to change any other settings. So just click on the hip and then the ankle. Then press Y to bring the tool up again, click on the hip and then the ankle of the other side. Right, so if I grab these two, move them around, I've now got my legs. Okay, so and obviously I haven't attached anything underneath yet, so that's not working, but that's fine. We want to start with the IK handles there. Just going to rename them quickly. So that's IK left leg and IK right leg. So let's set up the way that or the constraints that are going to be in our foot. Right, so remember how the joint driver chain works? It works by attaching things to these joints so they then move in the way that we want them to. Okay, so the first one I'm going to attach is I'm going to attach the IK handle to the ankle of our joint driver chain because we want that to move whenever this joint moves. Okay, so first thing I select is, I want the left joint driver chain. I'm going to select the ankle, then I'm going to select the left IK, going to go to constraint, and we just want to point constraint without any offset because they should be in the identical position. So done. Okay, cool. So now that means when we move our joint driver chain, our foot goes with it. Perfect. So always double check that that's what's happening. So the next one is we want the orientation of this ankle joint to match the orientation of this joint driver ball joint. So what we do is we grab the joint driver ball, then we grab the left ankle. So ball then ankle. We go to constraint. We get orient constraint, and we do want to maintain the offset, and we go apply. And so we test that by moving the driver. See now how when we rotate that, the ankle is rotating with it, which is perfect. And when it goes past here, don't worry, that's not broken. It's just because the IK has to stop right there. Okay, so now the last one we need to do is we need to do the toe is going to be driving the ball joint here. So there we go. So I selected the joint driver toe, then I selected the BN ball, and I applied or made the same orient constraint that we did for the other. Okay, so now when you look, when we move this around, we move our joint driver around, everything should match perfectly. Awesome. And so that's how we're going to get the extra functionality out of our rig here. Okay, so let's make sure everything's good. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly do it to the other side. So again, first one we do is we go the driver ankle is going to drive, or it's going to be point constrained. It's going to control the position of the IK handle. So select the driver ankle, then the IK handle, point constraint, done. Then I'm going to select the driver ball and select the bound ankle, orient constraint. And the reason why I'm not bringing up the option box is because the settings are the same as we used before. So it's much easier, obviously, just to click once. So next one is toe to ball. And remember, it's the joint driver first, then the bound joint. And orient constraint. So there we go. So when you test, what should happen is when you rotate the different parts of the joint driver chain, what you'll get is this kind of reaction, which is really nice from the rest of our leg. And this is a really nice simple setup that just works so well. Okay. And yeah, so we can also, if you grab the root, you can see that we're getting the action of our hips working too. Okay, so what's next? Actually, I'll just pause it there to make sure my recording is working.